Question 3 asks us to explain the left and right shifts in the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve and why these shifts might occur. The oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve represents the percent of oxygen saturation in hemoglobin in the bloodstream versus the partial pressure of oxygen in different areas of the body. The graph is split usually into two sections. We have the unloading phase and the loading phase. The unloading phase, the partial pressure of oxygen is ranged from 0 to 40 millimeters of mercury. And also in this unloading phase, you can see that the percent of oxygen oxygen-saturated hemoglobin is also lower. This shows us that lower partial pressures of oxygen from 0 to 40, that hemoglobin is not holding on to as much oxygen, which is good because in our muscles, they have a partial pressure of oxygen from 0 to 40 most of the time. Either when we're resting, that would be represented of 40 millimeters of mercury, or when we're exercising, that would get progressively closer to 0 or 1. That means that hemoglobin is holding on to less oxygen. That means it's passing from the blood to the muscles at a quicker rate, and we're getting greater amounts of oxygen. In the loading phase, that phase is going to range from about 40 millimeters of mercury to 100. And it's also going to represent the part of the graph that shows that as we increase our partial pressure of oxygen in different areas of the body, then that the percent of hemoglobin saturation is going to be higher. So oxygen is being withheld by hemoglobin because different areas of the body and different muscles have a higher partial pressure of oxygen, so that partial pressure gradient is small and oxygen is going to pass much more slowly from the blood to the muscles or anywhere else that it may need to at that partial pressure. A rightward shift in this graph is representative of the Bohr effect, and what that shows us is that, and the Bohr effect happens at onset of exercise and also happens more temporarily as you continue to exercise, so from pre to post training. And it represents that at specific partial pressures of oxygen, we're going to see a relative decrease in the percent saturation of hemoglobin. So at a normal partial pressure of 40, percent saturation of hemoglobin would be probably at 80. If that graph shifts to the right, then at a partial pressure of 45, we'll be seeing a shift to, or a oxygen saturation at about 80%, which means that at those higher partial pressures, we're getting more oxygen relatively, which is good because during exercise, we want as much oxygen as we can get in the muscles, because that allows for increased ATP resynthesis and therefore increased or longer periods of muscle contraction. If we see a leftward shift in this curve, it's kind of a bad thing. It means that at different partial pressures of oxygen, the body is holding on to more of the oxygen. This only really happens either when we're at really high altitudes above 9,800 feet, or if our core temperature is below 32 degrees Celsius. And that is just showing that our bodies are trying to hold on to as much oxygen as possible to try and stay alive, because that's what matters.